On Tuesday morning, I opened my inbox to find a message that looked anything but businesslike. Your clients are good, it said. It would be a shame if your password were everywhere. Below it were screenshots of our database, my username printed on every page, and a 5-digit number to make this question disappear. I knew who had sent it. It was my colleague, the man I had taught everything I knew. Now he wanted all my money for something I didn't do. He was waiting for me in a small conference room. "It's simple, Ruth," he said, leaning back in his chair. "You slipped. I covered it up. You reimbursed me for the cleanup, and no one can know you compromised the firm." His voice was soft, almost kind. That was the worst part. "I didn't do it," I repeated. He chuckled. "The words? It's what's on the screen that counts." He tapped the folder on his desk, and my username flashed in black. "Your login touched every customer. People trust Granny's notes. They won't question the story if I tell it right." "Martin," I said, using the name I'd once called in the hallway to ask for help moving safety deposit boxes. "I trained you." "I did," he agreed, his eyes warm and empty. "That's why I know how this will turn out for you." I glanced at the door. Printers hummed and phones rang in the hallway, the usual sounds that made you think there was nothing sinister going on behind glass. I lowered my voice. "You've decided to do some very dark things." He smiled again, slowly and patiently, and pulled the folder closer. "Today, Ruth." He didn't know I was already in another meeting with our IT manager. He didn't know about the innocuous file I'd created last week, the same innocuous old lady who'd created the fake folders that only a thief could have succumbed to. He didn't suspect much. He thought my age made me stupid and incapable of solving such problems. "I brought cinnamon rolls," I said, standing up. "Leave the folder. I'll think about it." "Don't stay too long," he muttered. "Rumors are spreading." I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table with the blackmail letter open, the dishwasher hummed, the old clock cleared its throat every hour, and from the bedroom I could hear the hoarse little squeaks of Otis, my elderly spaniel, who was dreaming. The laptop screen went to sleep twice. Each time, I would prod it with my fingertip just to see if the words had changed. They didn't. 5 digits. Make it disappear. It takes a special kind of cruelty to threaten a woman's existence while simultaneously naming the people she protects. My clients aren't numbers to me. They're the widower who forgets his PIN when his wife isn't around, the florist who counts the flowers and then forgets to count his receipts, the couple who never filed their taxes on time until I walk them through a winter of fat envelopes and patient tea. I know their birthdays, their worries, the sound of their sighs. To use my login like a crowbar, my name like a bruise, was more than theft. It was desecration. The building creaks differently after 9. The hallway lights outside our suite go to half strength, and the carpet seems to cushion each step more than it does in the daytime. Even the elevators hush. I went there with a loaf of banana bread I'd baked after dinner, still warm under its towel. The security guard nodded from his desk. "Late night?" "Early morning," I said. "Have you seen Ava yet?" He shook his head. "She usually comes in around 6. Ava is our IT manager. She looks 30, but carries herself like someone who has rebuilt a server room in a hurricane. She says things like immutable logs and time offset without making you feel small. 3 months earlier, she had stood in our staff kitchen and explained multi-factor authentication to people old enough to remember their first typewriter. "Passwords are not your personality," she'd said. "They should be disposable." We nodded and then went back to scribbling them on sticky notes we promised to shred. I called her cell. "You're up," she said, voice bright with that mix of curiosity and concern she can't quite hide. "I need a favor," I told her. Quietly. We met in her office 15 minutes later. She accepted a slice of banana bread with a thank you my grandchildren would recognize. Then she listened while I told her everything, the email, the screenshots, the number. I did not say his name at first. The part of me that fed Martin when he forgot his lunch still held on to the hope that this was a prank, a misunderstanding, a hack from somewhere far away. But the words he'd used, gentle, gentle, always gentle, told the truth. Ava did not rush. She propped her elbows on her desk and laced her fingers. "We'll do this the right way," she said. No hero moves. We preserve what we can, we watch, and we document. If he's in our systems, there will be traces. If he's outside, there will be traces. People like to think they are smoke. They are footprints. I need to be sure, I said. I need to be fair. She nodded. Then we set a canary. The canary lived in a place he couldn't resist. I created a client folder with a name designed to tug at any accountant's curiosity. Finch Eleanor Trust. Finch is the maiden name of a woman I knew in high school, and the word trust rings bells in a firm like ours. Ava watched me type. She gave the folder a special label, one only her console would see, and attached a microscopic tripwire that would whisper the moment anyone other than me touched it. Inside the folder, I planted a simple spreadsheet, nothing more than a list of made-up transactions and bank account numbers that would be harmless if copied and useful as evidence if moved. Beside it, I placed a PDF titled Finch_estate_passwords. The file did not contain any real passwords. It contained a paragraph I wrote to my granddaughter when she was 10 about how apples ripen all at once and you have to be patient so they won't taste like starch. The trap was the title, not the content. I also wrote an email to myself, created a draft in my inbox with the subject line, Finch, call before transferring. I addressed it to no one and clicked save. Then I sat back and looked at Ava. What happens now? Now, she said, we drink tea and pretend it is any other morning. The moment I left her office, my phone hummed, a new email from Martin. We can meet at 10. I'll bring the paperwork. The word paperwork did not belong in blackmail, and yet there it was, wearing a suit. I replied and suggested 9:30. He agreed. It felt like making a dentist appointment the day you discover a tooth has cracked in your sleep. By 9:20, I had brewed a pot of coffee for the staff and set out the banana bread on the kitchen counter. I listened to the office wake up. Chairs scraped, doors closed. Someone laughed at a joke I didn't hear. The smell of toner rose and fell as the copier warmed. I let my hands work the old rhythms, spread napkins, move mugs to within easy reach, cut slices neat as ledger lines, because those rhythms have steadied me through funerals and tax seasons, and the day my husband's cardiologist used the word inoperable, like he was introducing us to a cousin with a bad reputation. At 9:30, I walked into the conference room with a pad of paper. He was there already, back to the window where the morning sun turned his hair a pale halo. 57 years old. Neat. He'd learned the habit of nodding slowly when others spoke, a way to look thoughtful, cheaply. 2 years ago, I found him crying in the break room with a letter from his oncologist. It took both of us a full minute to realize it was a billing error. I drove him to the clinic to straighten it out. He sent me a bouquet the next day and a note I kept for a week because it was kind. Now he smiled as if we were planning an audit, and he pushed a manila folder across the table the way one might slide a dessert menu. It's simple, Ruth, he said again. We close the door, we settle this, we walk out, and no one gets bruised. I don't bruise easily, I said. The room reflected us back to ourselves in the glass. Behind his shoulder, a pair of sparrows landed on the windowsill and fluffed themselves into mottled balls. Tell me how you imagine this will go. He did. He described a mistake I apparently made, saving my credentials in my browser, forgetting to log out of a client profile, leaving a note on my desk. He was careful. Each sentence carried a grain of truth from someone else's story. We have all made small errors. We teach each other how to fix them. He rearranged those grains into a sandcastle and called it my negligence. What do you want? I asked. 50,000, he said. Small enough to be forgettable. Large enough to mean you understand what I spared you. Spared me? My throat was dry. I hadn't touched the coffee. It sat between us, steaming into nothing. From what? From disgrace, he said, with a softness that felt like moth wings. From the partners, from the clients, from becoming the cautionary tale at the Friday pizza lunch. He had practiced that line. He had said it to himself in the mirror, probably. I thought about the mirror in his upstairs guest bathroom. I'd seen it when I took his wife a casserole after her knee surgery. I have this unfortunate habit of feeding people who later try to starve me. 50,000, I repeated. All right. I reached into my purse and pulled out my checkbook. His eyes lit with a greed so small and sudden that it might have been funny if it weren't so tidy. He thought he'd won. He held out a pen. I wrote my bank's name across the top of the ledger and signed my own name on the line without numbers. Then I closed the book and placed it on the table, as carefully as one sets down a baby. You'll have it, I said, but not in this room. He blinked. Where then? In front of a witness, I said, I want you to sign a receipt. He smiled the way men do when they think they are being very patient. Ruth, there's no need to involve anyone else in this. There's every need, I said. It's a legitimate transaction, isn't it? For services rendered. For cleanup. His jaw moved, a tiny muscle jumping near his ear, a pulse of annoyance. If you want to make this harder than it is, I'd like to make it honest, I said. I will bring cash. You will sign a receipt. We'll do it in the records room. We'll give the receipt to Ava for safekeeping so accounting can track it properly. The records room is small and full of so much paper it feels like a ship's hold. It is also, as of last month, newly outfitted with a camera that no one notices. A decision born of a leak in the ceiling and our collective desire to know which file boxes would drown first if the roof failed. It is not secret, it is simply ignored. He looked at me for a long moment, weighing something I couldn't see. Fine, he said at last. 2:00. When he left the conference room, I stood and watched the sparrows reclaim the windowsill. My knees shook. I let them. At noon, Ava slid into my office with a mug and a look. Canary chirped, she said, too softly for anyone else to hear. Where? Your Finch folder, accessed at 9:53, then again at 10:12. Then it was copied to a USB drive that left the building at 10:27. How do you know it left? The log stopped talking to me, she said dryly. It's like a friend who goes through a tunnel. The file name finch_estate_passwords.pdf was placed on a thumb drive with the volume label M. And before you ask, yes, we log volume labels when they are what they call human readable. It was plugged into port 2 on conference room C at 9:51. Who was in conference room C? Martin and I said. The way my mouth shaped his name felt like a mistake I had to correct every time. She sat. You want the police? Not yet. I rubbed my eyes. I want the truth to fall where it belongs. If I run to the police without the partners, I will become the story he wants. She nodded. Then we do this at 2. I'll be ready. Any chance he's not alone? I asked. Ava's head tipped. What's got you thinking that? Men like Martin don't usually invent courage. They borrow it. She considered that, then stood. I'll pull door access logs for last night, she said, and the week before, and I'll check VPN connections. She paused. Whatever happens, we keep your name clean. It was a promise she could not control, but it buoyed me like a hand on my back in a crowd. I ate half a sandwich at my desk and chewed slowly the way my mother taught me because my stomach had turned into a fist. Then I called one person I had not planned to include, our managing partner, Harold. He and I came in the same year, different doors. He was hired straight from a firm in Chicago with a resume like a display case. I answered a part-time receptionist ad because my youngest was in 2nd grade and the house felt too quiet between 9 and noon. 30 years later, he was a name on the letterhead, and I was the woman who knew how to translate the worst news into plain English for people who were about to cry. He is 72 now, compactly built, careful with his sentences the way he is careful with his cufflinks. Our clients love him. I have, on more than one occasion, loved him too, in the way you love a colleague who believes in your useful stubbornness. Ruth, he said when he picked up, everything all right? Can you meet me in the records room at 2? I asked. It's important. A pause. Paper shuffled. 2:00, he said. Of course. I did not tell him why. It is a weakness of mine, believing that if I can hold one more secret, I can prevent people from getting hurt. I have learned that the opposite is often true. At 1:57, I stood in the records room with Ava. She adjusted the angle of the harmless little camera in the corner with her thumb so it looked as if she were straightening a picture frame. Then she slid her laptop into a corner on a rolling cart and opened a console that bloomed with logs I could not read. "Everything's in place," she murmured. "Microphone, camera, access logs. I have the Finch file hash ready to compare if he presents anything on paper. Chain of custody starts now." "I'm not a martyr," I told her. "If this goes sideways, you lock that door and call the police." "I'm not a hero," she said. "If this goes sideways, I start playing a very boring video about printer drivers until everyone wants to leave the building." Harold arrived first, right on the dot. He looked puzzled and then concerned when he saw my face. "Ruth, thank you for being here," I said. "We may need a grown-up." "I thought that was you," he said with a smile meant to reassure. His eyes searched mine the way a father's do when something in the house is not where it was yesterday. "What's going on?" Before I could answer, Martin stepped in and closed the door behind him. He carried a small envelope and a pen. "Shall we?" he said, the brightness in his voice entirely wrong for a room full of boxes and old paper. Harold looked from him to me, the smile gone. "Martin," he said carefully. I put my checkbook on the table. The small act steadied me. "Two things," I said. "First, you said you wanted to be paid in cash. I won't. I'll write a check, made out to you by name, and you'll sign this receipt." I pushed a pre-printed form toward him, one we use when reimbursing staff for conference fees, on which I'd written in neat letters: "Services rendered, cleanup assistance after alleged credential misuse." Martin's mouth ticked. He glanced at Harold, then back at me. "That's not necessary." "It is if you want your $50,000, I said. "Second, you have to show me what I'm paying for." He raised his eyebrows. "You want proof that I saved you?" Harold's voice cut in, quiet and firm. "Saved her from what?" Martin exhaled. The gentle tone returned, the one that made me want to scrub my hands after hearing it. "From the appearance," he said, and turned to Harold as if confiding. "There's been a breach. Small. Contained because I contained it. Ruth's login was used to access multiple client files. I quarantined the action and limited the exposure. I've kept this on the down low to avoid unnecessary panic. Ruth and I are just arranging compensation for my time." Harold's face, so controlled, shifted. Shock first, then irritation, then something older and tired. He looked at me. "Is any of this true?" "No," I said. "He accessed my login. He used my name on purpose. He wants to be paid for what he himself did." Martin laughed. It was a sound he uses to soften blows. "Ruth," he said, "this is embarrassing. We're friends." "You wrote me an invoice for hush money," I said. "We're not friends." Ava cleared her throat, and the sound came from behind a filing cabinet like a bird's call. She stepped into view. "I'm here," she said matter of fact. "And so is the camera. If there's proof of a breach, we'll document it. Discussing it without me would be a violation of every policy we've typed and signed." Harold's eyes moved, calculating. "All right," he said. "Let's see what we have." Martin's confidence dimmed a hair but did not extinguish. He reached into his envelope and pulled out a printed screenshot. My username was there, top right, crisp and undeniable. It showed a client file, real this time, not Finch, and a list of accounts viewed between 7:30 and 9 on the previous Thursday. Ava stepped forward, gloved hands out. She wears gloves when handling anything that might leave residue. It is a habit that delights me. "May I?" she said. He held the paper a second longer than he should have and then released it. She took a picture with her phone, then placed the paper in a clear sleeve as if she were storing a butterfly. "Hashing now," she said to herself. "Time stamping." Comparing to logs, I looked at the screenshot and felt the first true weight of fear. My username is my name. When I started here, they made me choose how I wanted it to appear. I asked for the version with my full last name, not the abbreviated one others use. because I wanted it to be obvious when I did something for someone. Seeing it used to harm those people felt like watching my handwriting on a threat letter. Ava glanced up. The user Ruth.Ingram absolutely accessed those files at those times, she said. But the machine that did it wasn't Ruth's, and the IP address came from a remote connection. The badge on Ruth's office door did not open that morning until 9:12 when she arrived. Her machine stayed asleep until 9:15, and the only activity I see that resembles human use is a burst of keystrokes to unlock it. The activity in the screenshot came from a VPN connection using a temporary token issued to... She paused, and for the first time her voice flickered. To who? Harold said. She licked her lip. To a concierge account at a vendor? She looked at me. One the partners approved for emergency support during our migration last quarter. I watched the understanding cross Harold's face the way a shadow crosses a pane of glass when a cloud moves in front of the sun. He did not look at me. He looked at Martin. What did you do? He asked. With our vendor credentials? Martin's mouth opened and closed. They were in my email, he said, the gentleness snuffed now, a small sharpness appearing under his words. Your office sent them to me. You told me to work late during the migration while Ruth went home. Harold's gaze cooled. It is a funny thing, watching a man remove himself from a decision he made in front of you. You were to use them only for the vendor session, he said. Not after. Not for personal business. Personal? Martin said, incredulous. I did this to save us. The login used was Ruth's. It would have blown up. I formed a story that holds. I protected your firm's reputation. Ava made a small sound. You planted a story, she said, to extort a coworker. That is not protection. That is predation. Enough, Harold said quietly. He looked at me. Ruth, leave the room for a moment. No, I said. This is my life. He drew in breath through his nose, then released it. Then be sure you want to hear what comes next. I waited. The records room smelled like paper and dust and old ink. It smelled like the first week of April and the last week of December. It smelled like everything we have already survived. Harold turned to Martin. If you wish to be paid for extra hours, you should have invoiced us, he said. If you believed there was a breach, you should have gone to Ava and to me. You did neither. Martin's face hardened. A part of him wanted to be caught and break something on his way out. Another part calculated. He chose the second because that is what he knows. I did nothing without precedent, he said. We have all used vendor credentials. We have all kept access longer than necessary. We have all looked at files we shouldn't have because people asked us to do favors. Not like this, Harold said. His voice was so calm it might have been mistaken for charity. You have one chance to hand me everything you took and accept the consequences here with us. If you don't, this goes beyond us. That was when Martin did the small fatal thing that men do when they have convinced themselves that the world is a deck of cards and they know every face. He smiled. Beyond us, he said. To where? The police? The board? The papers? You think your friends want to read about what happened during the migration, Harold? The air shifted. Ava's eyes lifted from her laptop and she set her shoulders back. I felt my own spine lengthen. There it was, the other shoe I had suspected would drop. He had not only stolen my name, he had tucked himself under someone's larger shadow. He believed he was safe because someone important was guilty of something bigger. I'm going to say this once, Harold said. He did not raise his voice. He placed both hands on the table, splayed. He looked very old and very young at the same time. You do not threaten me in my own records room. You do not dangle the firm's reputation in front of me like a child with a match. You will give Ava your devices. You will write down your passwords. You will sit quietly in conference A while we decide your employment. If you leave this building without doing those things, I will make one call, and you will learn what the words criminal contempt mean by supper. Martin's answer was small and vicious. You don't scare me, Harold. Harold's eyes, which have steadied 1,000 anxious hands, went dark in a way I had never seen. "I'm not trying to, Asmaya," he said. "I'm telling you who I am." It was nearly beautiful in its terror, that moment when the scaffolding inside a man shows. Martin set his jaw. Then, to my surprise, he turned to me as if I were the one he could win back. "Ruth," he said, "we can still do this quietly." I thought of the widow with the shaky hands, and the florist with the inaccurate change, and the bank teller who once took me aside to cry about her son's sentence because she had no one else to cry to. "No, Martin," I said, "we can't." Ava stepped forward with a small chain of custody form and a Ziploc. "Phone," she said, endlessly practical. He handed it over, then the small envelope, then the USB stick, its silver mouth still warm from his palm. "Anything else?" Ava asked mildly. He did not answer. She nodded, wrote the time down, and left. "I'll be next door," she said. "Come get me when you're ready." Harold didn't speak again to Martin. He opened the door and led him down the hall like a parent escorting a recalcitrant child. I sat in the records room with my checkbook and my banana bread and let the relief come slowly, as if my body were cautious of spending it all at once. It took exactly an hour for the second shoe to fall. At 3, Ava returned to my office with a folder and a tight mouth. "We have a problem," she said, and closed the door. "A separate one." "Breathe," I said, realizing I was speaking to her the way I speak to clients in trouble. "What is it?" She laid out 4 printed pages. Our vendor token was used last Thursday. It connected from a local IP address and from a remote one. The local one is on our network. The remote one belongs to a coffee shop on Maple Avenue. That connection lasted 22 minutes and accessed 6 client files, all of whom have sued people in the past 5 years. Funny pattern. It also looked at a hidden share on our server. Only partners have access to that share? "Hidden share?" I asked, trying not to sound as if I had just learned a new kind of secret. "Partners keep notes there," she said. "Intake assessments, risk reviews, a few items that are probably innocent but look terrible out of context. The token looked, copied, and left." Now here's the piece that makes my stomach rock. The same vendor token appeared on our network 2 weeks ago at 4 in the morning. It came from a machine in Harold's office. I stared at her. "A machine in Harold's office?" "His desktop," she said. "And before you say what you're about to say, remember that offices are rooms with doors. Badges tell part of the story, not all. His door was opened at 3:52 that morning. By whom? A badge labeled facility. That could be cleaning, maintenance, or a contractor. Could Harold have given someone access? I asked. Perhaps, she said. Or someone stole it. Or someone cloned it. Or someone propped the door and sweet-talked their way in. I don't know. What I know is this. It is possible that Martin is not the only person who touched our vendor token. It is possible that the token is being used to steal more than client notes. More? Ava pulled out the 4th page. The hidden share contains a folder called Transition, created 2 months ago. Inside are drafts of letters to select clients suggesting they move their accounts to a firm called Bay and White. She looked at me. Bay and White is opening a new branch on 3rd Street. They have an ex-partner of ours on staff now. The letters read like gentle advice to prevent disruption. They are signed by Harold. The drafts are dated for next Friday. I sat back. The room felt very cold. Are you saying Harold is planning to take our biggest clients elsewhere? I'm saying someone created drafts that say that, she corrected. Whether he wrote them is another question. The file metadata says they were created on his desktop, but metadata can be faked. I've seen interns change authorship lines by accident. I've seen worse done on purpose. I closed my eyes. I did not want to see Harold's careful handwriting under a letter that would starve the people we pay. I did not want to believe he would move accounts in the quiet and leave the rest of us to wonder why the phone stopped ringing. My mind did something it does when overwhelmed. It simplified. There were 3 tasks: protect the clients, protect the truth, protect the woman I have to look at in the mirror. Next steps? I asked. Ava pulled her chair closer, knees nearly touching mine. We do not ask Harold questions he can prepare answers to, she said. We do not accuse him of anything. We put everything we know in a place where it will be safe even if the building burns down. We call our cyber insurer and trigger incident response so that our logs are preserved by someone who can testify. And, hear me, we tell one person outside this building who can hold this without blinking. Who? Bay and White, she said. Or at least their counsel. If they are being used, they will want to know. If they are doing the using, they will get nervous. Either way, they become part of a timeline that doesn't solely belong to us. The thought of calling a competitor made my mouth taste like copper. But another thought overlaid it. The relief of not being the only adult in a room full of men who had told themselves a story about what would happen to a woman like me if she were pushed. I nodded. I'll make the call, I said, but I want a witness. Done, she said. We'll see them tomorrow at 9. I went home and fed Otis and stood at the sink for a long time with my hands under warm water. My daughter called to tell me that my granddaughter had gotten a part in the school play. She's a tree, she said, laughing, but she's delighted. She gets to sway. I'm delighted too, I said, and meant it. When we hung up, I sat in the dark living room and let the day unspool in my head. My husband, had he lived, would have told me to keep my back to a wall and to choose my confessions with care. He was a carpenter. He knew about weight and what it does to wood when you put it in the wrong place. He also knew how to draw out a nail without splitting the plank. Slow, he always said. Steady. True. I fell asleep on the couch with those 3 words in my mouth like mints. The next morning, I dressed in a dark skirt and a blouse my mother would have called sensible. I put on my small pearl earrings because I wanted my ears to remember something delicate in a day of hard talk. Ava met me in the lobby. We walked 2 blocks to a building with a brass plaque and a receptionist who spoke as if every word weighed the same. We did not see Bay and White's partners. We saw their counsel, a woman in her 50s, with hair she wore like a weapon. She set down a legal pad and did not smile. Tell me why you're here, she said. I did. I did not give her copies of anything. I described the blackmail, the canary, the vendor token, the letters. I watched her pen move. I watched her mind assemble a shape from the lines I offered. And the letters, she said, these drafts, how certain are you that your managing partner wrote them? Not certain, I said. Certain they exist. Certain they plan a transition of our largest accounts to your firm. We have a name on the drafts, and we have metadata. Both can lie. What can't lie is this. If a partner of ours is courting you using stolen data, you'll want to know. Before he shows up in your lobby with a smile and a flash drive. She nodded. He already did. She watched my face. Not with a flash drive, with a lunch. My partners took the meeting. They do not poach. They listen because it is polite to listen. The man who came was Harold. He mentioned the word succession 6 times in 20 minutes and spoke as if shepherding his favorite lambs to a greener field. He brought no documents. He was careful, as older men are when they've already made one mistake and don't wish to make another. The words felt like vinegar in a cut. When was this? Last Thursday, she said. Same day your token was used. Ava and I exchanged a long look. Paranoia is a poor carpenter. It builds crooked things. But patterns tell their own story. We don't want to be your bludgeon, the counsel said. If this is a scheme, we'll stand clear of it. If this is an internal struggle, we will not be your weapon. I don't need a weapon, I said softly. I need witnesses. You have them, she said. And, off the record, if a man brings us clients with his own firm's confidential data in his pocket, we do not hire him. We tell him to go home and write a memoir. We left with a different kind of fear in our throats, the kind that comes when someone you love might be a person you cannot stand beside. We walked back to the office in the brittle bright of a winter morning that pretended not to be cold. Ava stopped at the security desk to ask for last night's entries. I went upstairs and found Harold in his office with the door closed. Do you have a minute? I asked. His eyes were very tired. He gestured to the chair. A minute, he said. Maybe two. I sat and folded my hands in my lap the way I do when I'm in church, and I know the sermon is about something other than what it seems. We went to see counsel at Bay and White this morning, I said. I did not give him time to interrupt. We did not show them anything. We told them there may be drafts of letters written in your name suggesting a transition. They told us you had lunch last Thursday. He did not pretend to search his memory. I did, he said. They have an ex-partner of ours at the helm. He's lonely. He wanted to reminisce. I went, and you spoke about succession. I did, he said, because I am old. Old is a reason to plan, I said, not to steal. He closed his eyes briefly, as if the morning bright stabbed. When he opened them, I saw something that frightened me more than anger would have. Shame. I have not stolen, he said, but I have been careless. And I have been tired. Our vendor token lives in my top drawer because I told myself I might need it at 3 a.m. Last Thursday, I did. The server froze. I logged in. I should have called Ava. I did not. I am not proud of that decision. If I were younger, I would make up a reason. I'm not younger. And the letters? I asked. The drafts? I dictated a draft 2 months ago, he said. After our board meeting, when two partners said they were tired of carrying the risk of clients who argue about every bill and every hour, I asked my assistant to draft what a thoughtful letter might look like if we ever needed it. We never sent it. I did not put it in the hidden share. I put it in my own folder on my desktop. He looked at me. If it's in the hidden share now, someone moved it. A small part of me unclenched, another tightened. Martin, I said. Perhaps, he said. Or someone who wants you to think it was Martin. Or someone who wants you to think it was me. The room felt too small for its air. What do you want me to do? He smiled without humor. What you always do. Keep your head, tell the truth, and when the time comes, speak first. At 11, our cyber insurer's incident response team arrived. They were polite and efficient, people who look at rooms and see only the flow of packet logs. Ava took them to the server closet. I sat with a stack of invoices and pretended it was any other Wednesday. At 2, a building manager came to see me. He is a man in his 60s who wears a belt with more tools than I have utensils. He carried a small box in his hand. One of your people dropped this in the parking garage. I saw, he said. We label everything we find. It's easier to bring it to you than to log it in our system. He handed me the box. Inside was a second thumb drive, identical to the one Ava had bagged from Martin. Its volume label read M2. Where did you find it? I asked, keeping my voice casual. Level B, he said, under the stairwell, with a grocery receipt. From the corner store, he left me with the box and the knowledge that we were dealing with someone who had thought as far as spare parts and not much farther. When I gave Ava the drive, she smiled without joy. It's like they forgot every heist movie they ever watched, she said. Always check the backup plan. We did not confront Martin again that day. Human resources did, with a form and a pair of eyes that could have bored holes in steel. He signed and handed over his badge. He did not look at me when he passed my door. He looked at the carpet. Predators hate carpets. They can't hear their own footsteps on them. At 4, the incident response team called us into a room with too many chairs. Ava stood at the front with her laptop open. Here is the simplest version, she said, eyes moving across faces that had been kind to her and also skeptical of her until now. Our vendor token was used by at least 2 people. One was Martin. The other had access to Harold's office or to Harold's machine. The second use involved a hidden share and a set of drafts. We can't definitively say who moved the drafts. We can say the token was used from a coffee shop while Harold was at lunch there. She glanced at Harold. We have camera footage of you at a table with a man from Bay and White. The token pinged from the coffee shop's guest Wi-Fi 20 minutes into your meeting. That means someone near you, not necessarily you, used a device preloaded with our token to access our network while you were distracted. Near, Harold said quietly. How near? Could have been a table over, she said. Could have been behind the counter. Could have been in a car outside. The Wi-Fi extends to the sidewalk. He rubbed his temple. I remember a man with a baseball cap who asked for the sugar. I remember a teenager who wanted to know if the muffins had dairy. I remember feeling old. We will lock everything down, Ava said. We will rotate credentials. We will assume our vendor token is compromised beyond redemption, but we will not panic. That is for churches and weddings. A hum went through the room. People exhaled in different ways. Fear smells different on everyone. Human resources said something about procedure. A junior partner talked about reputational risk. A senior associate asked if we should call clients and tell them the truth. Yes, I said before anyone else could speak, we call them. We do not promise that we have prevented every harm. We promise we are watching. We promise we will never use the words proactive and out of an abundance of caution because those words taste like lies. We promise to tell the truth and to take the consequence of doing so, which is usually gratitude. They looked at me. It is one of the strange privileges of being a woman past 70. When you speak plainly in a room full of people who have learned to decorate their sentences, your words sound like bells. We split the list. I called the widow, the florist, the couple. I told them what we suspected, what we were doing, what to watch for. I told them not to click any emails from me they did not expect. I told them that if they felt fear at 3 a.m, they could call me and I would answer if I was alive. They listened. They thanked me. One of them cried. When I hung up, I cried too. Otis thumped his tail against my office chair. I had brought him that day because my heart needed the weight of his head on my shoe. At 7, after the building emptied of everyone but the incident responders and the cleaning crew, Ava came to my office and closed the door gently behind her. He's not done, she said. Who? Martin, she said. He still has copies. Or someone does. The canary showed up in a file attachment to a Gmail draft we recovered from the USB. It was addressed to an email I can tie to, wait for it, Harold's assistant's brother. The brother is a paralegal at a small firm known for representing clients who like to sue people like us. He has also, lucky for us, applied for a job at Bay & White. I found his resume on their site. I stared at her. Say it in slow English. She did. Someone is building a narrative with 3 paths. One where you take the fall for negligence, one where Harold takes the fall for poaching, and one where Bay & White looks dirty by association. The person who benefits from any one of those paths is Martin if he can sell himself as either the loyal watchdog or the guy who knows where the bodies are buried. How do we untell his story, I asked. With more story? With proof and timing, she said. We invite everyone he wants to manipulate into one room. We set the stage, then we make the canary sing in public where? Friday, she said, at the client appreciation breakfast. You're speaking at 9. Harold will introduce you. The room will be full of people we protect and people who want to be seen standing next to them. Martin will be there if he thinks there is any chance to regain control. He will try to work the edges, to whisper. We'll give him a better stage. I did not want to expose my shame at a breakfast with warm muffins. But I also knew that the fastest way to freeze a rumor is to put your hand in its cold chest and squeeze hard. Make it clean, I said. No theatrics. No ambush for the sake of ambush clean, she promised. But not soft. Thursday was a day of quiet signals. I asked Harold's assistant to print programs for the breakfast with an extra page, a snapshot of our security approach in plain language. She did so with a devotion that made me ache. She has worked here longer than most marriages last. I sent a note to the building manager thanking him for finding M2 and asking if our camera in the records room might be aimed just this once at a wider angle if we used the space later that morning. He obligingly checked the bracket. Ava spent the day with the incident team, making sure that when I spoke, I would not tell a lie by accident. She also prepared a slide that only 3 people knew would appear. That night, I slept and did not dream, or if I did, I cannot remember it. Morning arrived with the same pale apology it always brings in winter. I wore the blue jacket my husband used to call my armor. I put my granddaughter's drawing in my purse, the one of me with the 2 small hands and the gigantic heart, just to remember what I wanted to be. The breakfast was bustling. People hugged, people put pastries on small plates and then left those plates untouched because their hands were too busy telling stories. Harold shook hands like a man running for office. He looked tired and handsome in the way some men do when they have pulled an all-nighter without whiskey. When he stepped to the podium, the room quieted with a half-second of relief. He has that effect. His voice carries a bath of ease. "Thank you for trusting us," he said. "Today you'll hear from the woman who has told more people more difficult truths than anyone I know." He looked at me. "Please welcome Ruth." Applause like rain. It is nice, sometimes, to be loved. I walked to the front and placed my notes on the lectern. "Before we begin," I said, "I need to tell you something difficult in the simplest words I can find." And I told them. Not everything. The room did not need our internal map, but enough that we had detected unauthorized access, that it involved my credentials, that we had contained it, that we were working with experts, that we might be wrong about one piece or another, and that if we were, we would tell them and correct ourselves with gratitude. I watched their faces. Fear in rooms like this looks like a hand stopping halfway to a coffee cup. "As we speak," I said, "our systems are monitored with a depth that would make a submarine jealous. And to give you a sense of what that looks and sounds like, I've asked our IT manager, Ava, to show you something for 60 seconds. Ava stepped up, nodded to me, and clicked her laptop. On the screen behind us, a window bloomed with a simple animation, a rectangle labeled Finch Eleanor Trust. When she touched a key, a tiny red dot appeared next to it. "This is a honey token," she said, her voice made for explanations. "If someone touches this file who shouldn't, the dot appears. It also sends a quiet message to me with a timestamp. This morning, I placed a copy on a machine that has not been turned on since 2018. Watch." She pressed another key. Nothing happened. The dot remained dull. "Now," she said, "I'm going to ask someone in the back of the room to do what they think they can do without anyone watching." There was a rustle. People turned. Someone near the coffee urns coughed. For a moment, I thought we had misjudged the room, that power does not like to be reminded of its own reflection. And then, like a miracle or a small trick turned too simple, the dot reddened and began to blink. A soft chime rang, delicate and undeniable. Ava smiled with no pleasure at all. "There," she said. "Someone touched what they shouldn't." I watched the back of the room. Martin stood with a napkin in his hand. He looked at the screen. He looked at his own phone. He looked at Harold. He made a choice. He raised his hand. "It was me," he said, loudly enough that he wanted everyone to hear his contrition. "I did it to show you your system is flawed. I did it to show you how easy it is. I did it to show you why you should be grateful that someone like me is watching." Perfect, I thought. He had executed the oldest trick: set a fire, call the alarm, wait to be thanked. Ava's eyes flicked to me. I nodded. She clicked again. The screen split in two. On the left, a map of the room, dots where devices whispered their existence. On the right, a log with a timestamp. "Here is the device that touched the file," she said. "Here is the connection it used. Here is the burner email he kept open. Here is the Gmail draft with the file attached. Here is the recipient, a paralegal with a familiar last name. And here," she said, her voice very soft, "is the path he took to get into our systems in the first place, a vendor token attached to a USB labeled M." No one moved. Then Harold stepped to my shoulder. "Martin," he said, voice breaking only a little, "give me your phone." Martin didn't move. His eyes were busy calculating angles that had narrowed to nothing. "You can do one brave thing today," Harold said. "Make it this." Martin lifted his chin as if preparing for a photograph and walked toward the front. He handed over the phone. "I do not like public humiliation. It feels like a hunger that eats the wrong person. I wanted him out of the room where people who trusted us were watching. I wanted the door to close and the law to open. I wanted us to be a firm that knew how to handle rot without splashing anyone else's shoes." "Thank you," I said to the room. We will take questions after coffee. This is what trust looks like in practice. Not the absence of harm, but the presence of attention when harm is possible. People applauded, slowly at first, then with a relief that warmed my ears. We moved forward. The day went on. The police came quietly at noon, escorted by a detective in a suit that had not seen a tailor in some time. Ava gave them a packet with chain of custody logs, hashes, and a thumb drive that did not live in a pocket. They took Martin away through the back elevator. It would be neat to say that was the end. It was not. Before 4, a reporter called. Before 5, a blogger wrote a story with my name spelled wrong and a headline with the word scandal in it. Before 6, the widow I had called yesterday left me a message that she was praying for my enemies, which felt like someone laying a warm towel on a wound. And yet, through all of it, a thread ran. Truth told first is stronger than rumor. The victory I wanted would have been a press release with the word concluded. Instead, we got 3 different open doors. The first led to a conversation with Harold about retirement. He told me he would do it on a day when the sky looked like kindness, and that he would not take a single client out of the building without a party. The second led to a small ceremony in the break room a week later where Ava received an award that was not a plaque because plaques gather dust. It was a month of paid sabbatical to build the training we should have had 10 years ago. The third led to an apology. It arrived in the mail, not email. The handwriting was cramped. The return address was the county jail. "I didn't think you'd read this," the letter began. "I thought you were what men like me think older women are, tired and soft and eager to be believed when someone tells them they've made a mistake. You trained me. I told myself that meant you would forgive me faster than anyone else. I told myself a lot of things. I'm sorry I put the letter in a file. I do not save apologies for the pleasure of reading them again. I save them for their weight. They anchor the map." On Friday, 2 weeks after the breakfast, I met with a new client. She is 56 and has eyes that dart when she hears the word audit. Her husband died last year. She runs a landscaping business and knows everything about plants and nothing about payroll taxes. I made her tea and laid out a small plan. Deadlines, documents, a weekly call. She took a breath. "I heard you on the radio," she said. "They said you caught the bad guy." "No, I said and smiled. "We caught the bad story." That night, I took Otis for a walk in the park behind our house. The trees were bare, showing the honesty of their bones. My neighbor, a man in his 70s with knees that tell him when it will rain, said, "Saw you on the news? You looked fierce. I was hungry," I said. "For what?" "The same thing I have always wanted," I said. "To be the person standing between harm and people who don't know it's coming." He nodded. Men his age nod at women my age differently than they do at any other kind of woman. There is a solidarity in it that makes up for the years they did not listen. He put his hand on Otis's head. "You did good, Ruth. I thought about my husband. About slow, steady, true, and about Ava's gloves and Harold's tired eyes and the canary's small red dot pulsing on the screen. I thought about cinnamon rolls. I thought about the day we almost set the record for most clients who cried in the same afternoon and how we ate cake at 5 and did not tell anyone. The thing about revenge is that it is a word people use when they want to confuse justice with fire. I wanted neither fire nor chaos. I wanted the scale to settle. I wanted the story to reflect the hands that wrote it. I wanted to be a woman who did not turn her face away from the people she had promised to protect. I wanted very badly to sleep through the night and know that in the morning no one could point to my name and say she looked away. 2 months later, Martin's hearing took place in a courtroom that smelled like floor polish. I sat 3 rows back and watched him in a suit that had always hung on him strangely, as if the fabric knew more than the man did. He pleaded to things with numbers in their names that he will have to ask someone to explain to him again from a smaller chair. He did not look at me. When the judge asked if anyone wanted to make a statement, I rose and went to the podium. My knees did not feel old. The words came easy. "I am not here to crush a man. I said. I am here to widen a path that got too narrow when someone decided he could push an old woman off it. I forgive you. That is for me, not for you. For you, I ask the court to require what our clients would want, that you never touch other people's money unsupervised again, that you work, that you make restitution slowly and without fanfare, and that you learn to use the word we correctly. It means the people whose names you steal when you think no one is watching. When I returned to my seat, the widow was there. She squeezed my hand. "You always were the brave one," she whispered. She had never called me that when we were young. On the day Harold retired, the sky did look like kindness. He cried in the kitchen after everyone left, the way grandfathers cry when no one is looking, silently, shoulders shaking. He pressed a letter into my hand. And in it, he wrote that he should have trusted his exhaustion sooner, that he had used his age as a shield, and then blamed it when things fell through. He wrote that he had watched me for 30 years and learned how to speak simple when complicated would have hidden his ignorance. He left me his chair at the head of the emergency committee we had built from the bones of our worst days. I took it. Not because I wanted power, because I wanted to be where the first question is always who will be hurt, and the second is how do we make it right? On a Thursday, months beyond the morning of the blackmail email, a box arrived at my desk. Inside was a small porcelain bird, pale yellow, throat lifted in song. No note, no signature. I put it on the shelf above my monitor. When the afternoon light catches it, it looks alive. I like to think it is my canary's cousin, or perhaps my grandmother's, or perhaps the bird who will sing for my granddaughter when someone tries to tell her that the story belongs to the person with the tallest voice. How could a man I fed, praised, and defended decide I was the easiest person to ruin? He decided it the day he mistook softness for absence of bone. That happens to women like me every day. We learn to live with it until the day we don't. The day we move the tea to the other end of the table and let the rope he wrapped for us slip through our hands and watch, with a sadness that does not paralyze us, as he steps into the space he thought contained us. If there is a lesson here, it is not about computers or tokens or how to title a file so that a thief can't help himself. It is about the time required to make a trap that is not cruel. It is about the care you take to preserve dignity where you can. It is about telling the truth early and being willing to be the person in the room who looks old until you open your mouth. It is about understanding that revenge is just another word for balance in a house where the scale has been fixed to favor the man who got there first. The story doesn't end with a headline or a press release. It ends the way most stories do in my life, at the kitchen table with a pen and a list, things to remember, things to call, things to bake. A granddaughter's performance time, a widow's question about her insurance, a florist's uncashed check, a note to myself that says, steady. Another that says, true. And then, because I am still learning, a third, only this one is in my granddaughter's hand, stuck it to the edge of my monitor when she visited the office last week while her mother ran an errand. It says, don't forget to be brave. I haven't, not this time. And if you still want to know how we got here, from the day he slid those screenshots across the table with his gentle voice and his clever lie, then you have to picture the hallway outside our records room, the half-light, the smell of paper, and the steady hands of a woman who has watched storms blow through houses and learned to nail windows closed without waking the children.
My grandma told me this story. I have many more stories. Subscribe so you don't miss the most interesting things.